Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things, embrace your neurodivergence, learn tips and tricks to function optimally, and love yourself, neurodivergence and all. Welcome to the Self-Loved Woman podcast. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. I'm super excited because today we're going to dig into a really important topic for entrepreneurs, and I think particularly important for women with ADHD. And it's all about the masculine and feminine today. And we have an amazing guide, Eleonore de Posson, which I'm probably butchering her name, but I'm so glad to have her here today. Eleonore, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored to be sharing about my work on your podcast.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So your book is The Path of Femininity.
Mm-hmm.
6 Gifts of Your Sovereignty, which is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe getting to that journey of writing something like that, or?
Absolutely. So I have always loved writing. It's always been part of who I am. I'm a spiritual teacher, an author, a healer, and I always knew that speaking and writing was going to be the way that I was going to teach and support and guide people. And so this is actually my second book. And I was at first helping women heal trauma through the power of self-love. And while I loved what I was doing, I felt that I was meant for more, that there was something more that wanted to come through me, but I didn't really know what it was. And I just kept having that word surrender come back to me. And I was like, I have no idea how to surrender. I'm a control freak. And so I was very much in my masculine at the beginning of my business, at the beginning of really being a coach. I was always very called by spirituality, but I didn't dare to call myself a spiritual teacher or a spiritual coach, because of the witch wound that I had. And we can talk more about that, but the witch wound is all about the fear of being seen for who you really are and sharing your spiritual gifts with the world. And so this word surrendering kept coming back to me. So I read a few books about surrendering, and it helped a little bit, but I was surprised to see that not so much information about surrendering is out there. I think it's a societal struggle.
That makes sense.
I was like, maybe this could be the topic of my next book. And so first, of course, I had to master it because I was no way near to that. And so one day in a meditation, I was doing an information detox. I was not reading any books, not listening to any podcasts, not using social media, not reading the news, not doing any Google search. And it is crazy the amount of time you get back in your life when you don't fill your brain with information.
Yeah.
We are so stimulated by information. And the purpose of doing an information detox, it helps with your dopamine, of course. But the purpose really is to reconnect with your own intuition and creativity. Because in that space that you've created for yourself, suddenly you're going to hear your inner wisdom more, your inner voice. You're going to have more time. So you're going to be like, okay, well, what if I went for a walk? Or what if I watched this video? Or, well, no, you're not supposed to take information in, but
Yeah.
What if I meditated or did yoga? Or, you're more led by your intuition and your spiritual being. And so I was doing a meditation, and I received the message very clearly of, you're going to write a book about the feminine. And I was like, oh gosh, like I have no idea. I'm like starting to explore it with this like intuition thing and surrender thing, and I don't know. But the message was like, just begin, and then you'll be taught. Life is going to teach you. You're going to learn. I kept receiving confirmations and signs that I was meant to write this book. So that was really funny. And then a few weeks later, I actually got woken up in the middle of the night from a dream. And it was a friend of mine in that dream that said to me, the version of you that is all smiley, being the good girl, it got you that far, but that's not going to work anymore. So you have to show your true colors. So I woke up from that dream and I was like, oh, I think I have to write this message down because that was really powerful. It felt very real.
Yeah.
So I take my phone and I start writing that down. And then I have another download and then another download. And then I'm like, okay, I think I know what's happening here. And so I found myself surrounded by my guides, and they were actually teaching me about what it is to be in your feminine power.
Wow. That is just beautiful.
Exactly. And so I share a little bit about that story in the introduction of the book, because for a whole hour, I just kept having download after download after download. And so they gave me the title of the book. They were like, you're going to call it also the 6 gifts of your sovereignty. Here are 5 gifts. You know the 6th one already. And we'll keep teaching you about these gifts. So this is the direction you need to follow. And I was like, okay. And then they also said, you'll also teach that in a mystery school later on. And I was like, yeah, one day. I did not feel ready to step into, that kind of responsibility and power and leadership. But so I wrote the book. Publisher came to me. It was really easy. The book came out and it's just going on its own journey. Like almost every day I'm receiving emails and messages of people saying, I found your book. Someone recommended your book. I randomly, your book fell into my hands. It's been helping me so much. And my husband is always like, you should promote it more because it's helping so many people. But it's just led by the unseen, and it's really beautiful. And so obviously to be able to write a book about the feminine, I really had to learn to step into that energy fully myself. And it's been an initiation.
Yeah, even your marketing approach, so to speak, is a surrender.
Oh yeah. That's how I live my life.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's how I live my life, because the 6 gifts that I talk about in the book. So the first one is authenticity.
Yeah.
And then there's intuition, magnetism, surrender, receiving, and grounding. And I really live my life like that. How can I tap into my own magnetism, because that's very connected to the heart? How can I be more in my heart? How can I follow my intuition? How can I surrender more? How can I be more authentic, more grounded, connected to the earth? And it's really become just a way of living. Of course, you need to be in your masculine as well. We're not rejecting the masculine here at all. The purpose is really to create sacred union between these 2 parts of yourself. But because we live in a world that is so masculine, we have to learn about the feminine. We have to learn to embrace her. We have to learn to come back to her and express those parts of us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's so much. I know, just even reading the book myself, it's been a practice. It is definitely not an information book. It's a practice book. And I mean, there's exercises in it even, and lots of writing activities. But I wonder if you'd speak a little bit about just even some foundational stuff around the masculine and feminine, kind of helping people understand what that necessarily even means.
Absolutely. So when we talk about the feminine, we have this idea of the feminine needs to be submissive. She needs to be the good girl, and that's very much the image that patriarchy has painted of woman, because that's what patriarchy wants us to be, not speak our truth, be kind, be beautiful, but keep your mouth shut.
Totally.
And that is not the feminine at all. At all. Feminine is actually incredibly powerful. So the way it works is that we can trace this wisdom back to very ancient times. And I first learned about that in traditional Chinese medicine, actually, because they talk about yin energy and yang energy. And maybe that's a nice way to approach it, because then we don't have those big archetypes of feminine and masculine. And so yin energy is the feminine, and yin energy is the night. It's cold energy. It's grounded energy. Whereas yang energy, it's masculine energy. It's more about doing. It's warm energy. It's the day. It's connected to the sun. And so if you want a yang that is working properly, you need a very grounded yin energy, because the yang comes from the yin.
Yeah, you
Think
talk about
it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Every man comes from the womb of a mother.
Right.
Every plant comes from the dark soil of the earth, the feminine mother.
Uh-huh.
Every day starts at midnight when it is the night, when it is dark, when the moon is ruling.
In the feminine.
Everything begins with the feminine.
Yeah. Wow.
And our ancestors understood that really, really well. Actually, it's only been 2,000 years that we have male-dominated religions on Earth. Before that, we can trace it back to 200,000 BC. So that's a very, very, very long time. During all those years and centuries, there were only goddess traditions. They believed that God was female because it was the creator, the creatrix.
I have heard that in my yoga circles, and that there used to be much more of a matriarchal society, and things were much more connected and community oriented. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that, anyone's advocating for like, get rid of the masculine. They need each other.
Absolutely.
It's recognizing that it's the feminine energy that creates.
That leads, actually.
That leads. Yeah, that leads. I appreciate knowing that because, this is maybe unpacking. I try and keep this short so my ADHD doesn't take us off the rails. But, it's interesting. I was always very, very good at math, right? And I was a girl and I wasn't supposed to be good at math, but I was always very good at math. And so then I was going to go somewhere because I was good at math, which is so silly, that messaging. But so I started out with an accounting degree in college, switched to math. And in my freshman year, I had some really interesting like sociology class and like another humanities class. And those were the most interesting to me, though I actually did enjoy calculus. I'm not going to lie. I loved calculus. But when you get up into higher calc, it actually is much more feminine energy anyway. So it's because it's all it's much more abstract and fluid. But anyway, there was such a rejection of the feminine because what I thought the feminine was is what you said it isn't, which is the, being rescued and being weak and being quiet and not speaking our truth. And I was like, well, I am not that, and so I can even see it in my dress now and the way that I show up in the world. It's so much about like, not as much anymore since finding yoga in my mid-30s, but there was such a rejection of the feminine in me because of what I thought it was, but that's just what the patriarchy had me think it was. And so I can't help but wonder if I'm not the only person and who's done that. And if you see that at all in yourself, or if you see that in some of the women you work with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I remember the first time that I touched upon that wisdom, it's because I went to see a traditional Chinese medicine doctor because I was having health and gut issues.
Yeah.
And I remember that when she said to me, oh, your energy is mostly yang, I was really proud. I was like, I don't want to be yin. I don't want to be feminine. The feminine is boring. The feminine is not smart. She's too emotional. She's hysterical. That's not me. Yeah. Because of all like these wrong and false messages that we have put on what a woman should be and what a woman is. And that image, it's actually the wounded feminine.
Oh.
So while we are making a distinction between masculine and feminine, there's also a distinction that needs to be made between wounded feminine, wounded masculine, and divine feminine, divine masculine.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. And so just to make everything clear, I'm going to reiterate really what like the feminine and the masculine is. So the masculine, it's all about doing, taking action, putting yourself out there. It's an energy that's very outward. Think about the sun that is shining, that is, being out there in the spotlight. Whereas the feminine, think about the moon. It's much more inward. It's reflective. because the moon actually doesn't shine. It's reflecting the light of the sun.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The moon is actually dark.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but you're right. It is dark.
Yeah. So the feminine has this very deep darkness quality. And I mean, we could do a whole podcast just on that topic because people are afraid of darkness, but darkness is actually a birther and a transformer. But yeah, that's a whole topic in itself. So the feminine, it's more about being, receiving, and also being a bridge between the unseen and the seen. So really being tapped in, being connected to source, because I mean, we birth babies. Where do these souls come from?
Right.
We're bridges.
Right.
And so that's like, in general, the feminine and the masculine. And so expressed in its wounded or unintegrated aspect, the wounded masculine is going to be very dominant, very authoritarian, gaslighting, very competitive as well.
I don't mean to sound snarky, but that's all I see lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not all, but it's the rule, not the exception.
Yeah,
is what I see lately. Yeah,
a lot of people are stuck in their wounded masculine and they don't even know.
Right. Wow.
They don't even know. And so that wounded masculine that wants power, that abuses power, that is, authoritarian and pushes others down, that gaslights, that's abusive. I mean, that person is not even fulfilled being like that. It's just that they've learned to be like that because that's how we were believed to show up and to find a place and maybe to be even respected within society. It's really using fear as a way to have power. Whereas the divine masculine is so beautiful. It's very compassionate, actually. It's very much in his heart. It listens. It's the structure, the container, the force that is going to allow the feminine to flow. And so the divine masculine is there actually in service of the divine feminine.
Yeah.
Because the divine masculine understands that the feminine is the bridge.
Right.
And that when the feminine is tapped in, and he is connected to his feminine as well, and in his divine masculine essence, he can actually use the feminine as a bridge for his own evolution, alignment, and fulfillment, because there's constantly energy exchanges between us in our relationships.
Right.
And so the masculine is really there in service of the feminine. And when we think about it, it's a bit cliche, but it's this idea that men want to make their wives happy. They're really there to hold space for women. That's a very divine masculine expression of how we could be as men and women, because we have all those energies within us. And so now for the feminine, the wounded feminine, she deep down, she doesn't trust herself. She doesn't feel enough. And so that is going to show up as being a little manipulative to get what she wants. Playing the victim to have power over others, to attract attention. Sometimes being seductive as well, because she only knows how to use her beauty and not her intelligence or emotions or intuition.
Right.
She is going to be needy. She can be dependent. And so, of course, submissive, seeking other people's approval, asking for other people's opinions. She's very disconnected from her power.
Right.
Whereas the divine feminine, she is totally aligned with her essence, with her soul, with her power. She knows what she wants. She knows where she's going. If she doesn't know, she's totally fine with that, because she's totally surrendered and she knows her intuition will always guide her. She's authentic. She speaks her truth. She is there to receive. She realizes she's just here to be. There's nothing to do. Everything else will fall into places. And of course, because we have feminine and masculine within us, you can take action when you feel called to, where your intuition is guiding you towards it, when something is just offered to you and you're like, okay, I'm going to move forward with this. So it's really a dance. But the divine feminine, she's very much like, I love to think about like the archetype of the queen.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
very divine feminine. Or the archetype of the warrior as well.
Yeah.
The archetype of the mother.
Yeah.
Those are all like very feminine archetypes that are really in their divine expression.
Well, it has me thinking about like, as a yoga teacher, I know some of the Hindu goddesses, and it has me thinking about like Durga and Kali and and just that very fierce but loving.
Yeah.
Like,
so even amongst the goddesses, you have like dark goddesses, lunar goddesses, and then you have solar goddesses. So there are different expressions of that. But when you look at the Trimurti in the Hindu tradition, you have Durga, Kali, which are often like also connected to Parvati, like
Parvati, yeah.
And then you have Lakshmi, and then you have Saraswati. And if you put the three of them together, that would represent the divine feminine.
I see
the feminine aspect of source, of God, and of us.
That makes sense.
Our potential as well.
That makes sense. I can even feel that in my body because, you know, when I think of Saraswati with her musical instrument, and there's just such a, I don't know, it's like it almost feels like a surrender energy. I don't know why I feel that way, but I just, when I look at her, whereas Kali's much more fierce and Durga's much more fierce and like, definitely more action oriented. Not that playing music isn't action, but anyway.
No, but absolutely. I love where you're going with this, because Saraswati, she's really the goddess of self-knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of the arts as well.
Yeah.
So it's about know thyself. And that's such an ancient teaching as well. You know, like know thyself. It's a maxim that was written on like the temple of Apollo in Delphi. It's like comes from the old mystery schools from ancient Egypt and ancient Greece.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's interesting to see that this teaching is also present in India, because actually all these like spiritual lineages are connected.
Yeah.
But so she really, in order to know yourself, you have to be reflective.
Right.
So that's where the surrendered energy comes from. It's about going within, going with the flow, and letting life be the teacher and reflect back to you, okay, what's happening in my life? Who am I? Who am I not? How can I improve? How can I be more authentic? How can I be more true to myself? And then music is vibration. We are vibrational beings, and you can use music to connect with your essence more and to connect with your feminine more, to bring certain qualities out of you. And so Saraswati has that very like reflective, surrendered and creative energy. Lakshmi, it's all about the abundance and beauty of life and harmony and balance as well. The feminine is also, she can be in that balance. She can also dance from one side to the other, but she's always going to come back to her center. And it's proning beauty, because it's not because we are rejecting the feminine that is like, be beautiful, but shut up, that we shouldn't be beautiful. No, you still honor your body as a temple, but it's be beautiful and speak your truth.
Oh, that is so lovely. That is so lovely. Yeah. I appreciate that. That helps me unpack. You know, I'll make this short because I don't know how relevant this is, but to everyone who's listening, but I have a picture of Vishnu is on his like serpent couch, and Saraswati is I don't know if what she's doing. She's kind of sitting at his feet. I don't know if she's like helping him in some way or honoring him in some way. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I can't remember, but I was always like, why is she like a servant to Vishnu? Like, she's a badass, and that helps.
It's also because they are in pairs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the Trimurti and the Tridevi, and you have the Tri feminine and the Tri masculine. And so I think that she can represent that energy of like, I surrender to you, my king.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's some of that too that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Within divine feminine. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the divine feminine is surrendered. And so the way that the feminine and the masculine play together, it's that it's really a dance.
Yeah.
And I love to say that the feminine takes the lead because for me, the feminine is connected to spirits and we are spiritual beings. And so if we try to take the lead with our heads, with our minds, with the rational, which is masculine, we're not going to be in alignment. We're not going to be connected to our hearts and our truth.
Yeah.
But if we take the lead with the dreams that we have, the vision that we have, the desires that we have with our intuition, really, then we're aligned. And that's why, kings and queens and politicians have been going to see oracles and psychics for centuries because they knew that what would bring them the highest good was going to come from spirit.
Wow.
And so that's why for me, the feminine leads with her intuition, with her connection to source. But then she communicates her desires to the masculine, who's going to set up the container, who's going to structure the journey and allow the feminine to birth it. And so there is a moment where the masculine is going to have to take the lead to allow the feminine to thrive.
And she surrenders to allow that to happen.
And then she surrenders to the container, to the structure, to the path that has been led by the masculine.
Wow. Okay, this has me thinking about some of the people I work with and ADHD and struggling with structure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and really struggling with any sense of structure at all, but yet needing the structure. Like I need the structure to function. Otherwise, I can't keep track of anything. Like I need some sense of structure. But I also know some of my clients, all are women. I work with women who really struggle with the structure. And I wonder if this is some of that interplay of some of that wounding you're talking about.
Yeah, it can be two things. It can be, first, I would have a look at the lack of grounding.
Oh,
because if you want a masculine that thrives, that's in its divine expression, it needs a grounded feminine first. So that means you need to be in your body. You need to be, and not in your head.
Yeah.
If you're too much in your head and you're not grounded, you're going to be totally disorganized, not structured, not able to birth your ideas into life.
Wow.
And so first you need that grounding, you need that presence, you need that connection to your body, you need that connection to the earth, you need a regulated nervous system.
Yeah. I talk about all the time that like if you're having a hard time motivating yourself or you're having a hard time focusing, it's because you're dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true.
Most of us are, because our world is dysregulated, because we're overstimulated by information. And most of us are also ungrounded because it's as simple as, like I said, we're spiritual beings having this human experience. And sometimes this human experience can be hard. And so we check out.
Right.
We check out of our bodies. We don't want to feel anymore.
Yeah. And
so
we check.
We have,
Go ahead.
We have to bring ourselves back.
Right.
I unground myself often, even without realizing it. If I have something that's like destabilizing me, like a big news or a big conversation or something happening that I didn't expect, it's going to unground me. And so 99% of the population is ungrounded to start with.
Yeah.
So if you have ADHD, it's definitely going to be your case. So working on that grounding is the first thing that I would say. And then it's about inviting the masculine in of like, what is the structure that would support me? What is the structure that I can create where I can still flow? Because putting too much structure is going to prevent you from flowing, from following your intuition, from receiving messages from your intuition, from being creative. And so it's a sacred dance. As your understanding through my conversation, it's always one and then the other, and then one and then the other, and then bringing them together. It's not one or, it's both ends.
Right. I think it's such an essential point. And my observation is that's hard in our society, which tends to be very polarizing and black and white, and it's this or it's that, instead of recognizing that it's both. And
it's both. It's both and because we have such a polarizing perspective on what it is and how it should be and how society already is, we first kind of have to do like a detox of the wounded masculine.
Right.
By going excessively into the feminine, truly embodying her, and then calling in the masculine. So it's a journey.
Well, and you did your detox of the masculine by that was your info fast.
Information detox. Yeah.
Detox. I put fast, but it was more than that.
It's more than that. It's more than that. It's healing the masculine wounds as well of like, it's the wounds of power.
Right. Yeah. And there's so much of that. You know, it's interesting. One of the things that was coming to mind for me as we're talking, there's an author, Terry Real, who's I think he's a therapist. I can't remember. His book is quite old. It's called, I don't want to talk about it. Not underlying the secret, the hidden story of male depression or something like that. I'm getting the title wrong, but basically it talks about it. And one of the things that he talks about when he's talking about why men are behaving the way they are, right, which is really they're embodying the wounded masculine, is like how I believe you would say that if I had to guess. Yeah. And you're shaking your head, yes. So I think I'm on the right track. But one of the things that he talks about is one of the first things society does to make sure men act in this quote unquote masculine way, which is the wounded masculine, is that they strip men of everything that is feminine. Mm-hmm. But the things that are feminine that they strip them of are actually the wounded feminine. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, because they strip them of, like, they don't want to be a sissy or they can't whatever. And you're talking about how like feminine energy in its power is strong.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes and no, in the sense that the feminine truly honors her intuition and her emotions. Oh, and yeah. I think that's where men have been stripped off of their feminine, because men cannot express their emotions. Like, I still see it sometimes when I'm walking down the street and there's a boy crying and his father is like, oh, come on, get up, don't start crying. You just like, you're okay, just get up. And so that is dismissing emotions. Right. Whereas the feminine, she embraces all emotions. She just recognizes that emotions is energy. It's just moving through me. It's information, and it's not good or bad. Right. And society also dismisses intuition, which is illogical. Totally. Not rational, and shows up in random ways and in dreams. And you know, how many times do we say, oh, it's just a dream? No. This is your higher self speaking to you. You're receiving guidance. This is like a potential, a path that could happen to you. Like, even if we think about dreams that are like not the dreams that you're having at night, but the dreams that you have in your mind, you're receiving these visions because you can achieve them. Yeah, I love that. They're not random. I like that. This whole idea of like dismissing emotions, dismissing dreams, dismissing intuition it's dismissing the feminine of the masculine. And I think the masculine is maybe struggling with that even more than we do, because it's been centuries that men have had to fight, to go to wars, to, push down their wives because they had to be strong in front of their friends, and maybe they didn't even want to be like that. And I see a lot of men struggle with that today because they're not in touch with a really big part of themselves. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And then it makes it hard to plug in to anything. Yep. Yep. And then they find themselves, lost, and they don't know their path. And society just tells you, well, get a job, make money, and then you'll be okay. And then they get a job, they make money, and then they're not okay. Right. And then they're like, what's going on? Right. So true. And it's beautiful because many people are now talking about this wisdom and these teachings, and it's helping all of us, as much men than women. Yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. Well, I can even see the wounded masculine in myself, right? Mm-hmm. Like a little bit.
less and less the older I get and the more inner work I've done and the more yoga and meditation I've done, I see it less, but it's still there sometimes.
It doesn't go away overnight. Like it's a journey.
Yeah.
You know, this is why I said, start with an information detox. Amazing if you can create the space for yourself to do that. But you're going to need more work than that.
Yeah. Well, it's true.
It's healing the masculine and then healing the feminine. And in my book, I also speak about those 3 feminine wounds.
Would
you step into the divine feminine?
Would you touch on those a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So the 3 feminine wounds, I always like to say that they are very connected to Mary Magdalene. So I don't know how connected you are to Mary Magdalene or how much you know about her.
So I know a fair amount because so I am a recovering Catholic and have since learned about the beautiful priestess that Mary Magdalene was, in that her book that she wrote to go in the Bible was actually taken out, as was Thomas's and Judas's. Judas's interestingly mentioned something about, God is within, like spirit is within us, so we need to listen to that too and turn in and anyway, which isn't surprising that the kings would take that out, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, so I have some knowledge, but I'm not sure that everyone listening will know much about Mary Magdalene.
Yes. So the true Mary Magdalene is very unknown to the general public, and you really have to start reading books to start knowing who she really was. And it's very interesting to see that more and more people are curious to know about her. It's like suddenly in the past years, all these books are coming out and they're like, who was she really? Because she is the embodiment of the divine feminine. And her wisdom is coming back. Her popularity is rising because we have this whole rising of the feminine. And so often when we feel called to explore her path, her life, who she really was, it's because the feminine is calling us. The goddess is calling us. And so she was really a woman in her power. She had a spiritual contract with Jesus, and together they were going to create this new spiritual path, hand in hand. So ideally, instead of seeing Jesus on the cross in every single church, we would have wanted to see Mary Magdalene and Jesus holding hands, walking the same path. They came to teach about love and sacred union. And they both needed each other.
That's a wound in of itself, just to hear that, like the trauma of that.
Yes.
Like growing up in the Catholic church I was at had a very, I would say, graphic statue of Jesus on the cross. And it was scary to look at as a child, and definitely taught us to be God-fearing and man.
Yes.
And I just like, I had a part of me inside like soften and go, oh, that would have been so much better to grow up with. Like I would have stopped so much wounding that happened, not just in me, but in all my classmates and everyone I knew, but then a lot of the women that I know that come in with religious trauma. To my private practice, not my ADHD business, but yeah. Oh, wow.
I feel that too. I also grew up in a very Catholic girls' school with a uniform with nuns, and we had mass every Friday morning. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I cannot look at that cross with Jesus on it.
I can't either.
And now when I go to the church, which I very rarely do, I just go for weddings. I'm like the rebel who's like changing the text and saying other sentences when there are prayers. And my husband is always like, what are you doing?
That's excellent.
For example, when we say like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, who do you think the Holy Spirit is?
The mother.
Yes, it's the goddess.
I never thought of it that way till you said it, but I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's obvious. Once you start digging all these things, it's like, oh.
Well, I am the sign of the cross, the holy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
it's also like the matter and spirits. It's
Right.
feminine and masculine.
Right.
So there's a lot of like symbols of sacred union and sacred balance within the church, but it's just that they wiped it off and they're not teaching it that way.
Right.
Because the way the church was built was to gain power over people.
Right. For the kings, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because politics and religion, they were very tied together at the time. So it was all about power and money.
Yeah.
And yeah, we entered a very dark age. But the beautiful thing is that a lot of these teachings are coming back now. And this Christ consciousness of like sacred union and Mary and Joshua is really showing up now.
Yeah.
And so Mary, really the way she is depicted in the Bible, she's a prostitute.
Yep.
So the whore wound.
Yep. The whore wound.
Very independent. And even at the time, people did not like her that much. They would call her the bitch, quote unquote, because she was very independent. She would just walk her own path. And the way actually Jesus shared his teachings is that he shared his main teachings with Peter. Peter is the one that set up the church because he was very charismatic, very good at speaking to people. We have to understand that at the time, the mass consciousness was lower than what it is now.
Right.
People weren't able to understand as much on the spiritual level. And so Peter was great because he was understood by the mass. And so he was very needed to spread the message of love that the church was there to spread. But patriarchy was already present. And so he didn't like that Mary Magdalene was one of the apostles to start with. And he didn't like at all that Jesus was sharing some deeper teachings with Mary Magdalene that she could understand, but he couldn't.
Well, that makes some things clear.
Yes. Because she was a very high initiate from the mystery schools, just like Jesus was. They both traveled the world for many, many years before they actually started their ministry, when Jesus was actually 33, older than what the Bible says. But that's another story for another day.
Uh-huh.
And so Jesus and Mary Magdalene had a lot of very deep conversations with John the Baptist as well.
Yeah.
That Peter couldn't understand, and he was very jealous of that. And so when Jesus died and Mary Magdalene and John said to him, you're going to teach that to the people and spread the message of love to create the church. And we're going to have our own mystery school with the deeper teachings. So there's going to be a right way and a left way. He did not like that at all. And so he did a lot to discredit her. The church did as well. And this is why we have lost all of Mary Magdalene's teachings. And she created the path that is known as the Gnostics. I don't know if you've ever heard.
Uh-huh.
So she's the leader of the Gnostics.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I knew she was sacred and special. And I knew that I had been incorrectly informed about her growing up. But oh my gosh.
Yes. So you see her power?
I do
How
see her
important
power.
she was. But
No wonder she was scary. I mean,
exactly.
to the wounded masculine.
Yeah, exactly. But she was depicted as a whore, a bitch, and a witch because she was very tapped in and she was a healer.
And those are the
three. And those are the three wounds: the witch wound, the whore wound, and the bitch wound.
Yeah.
And so the way these wounds show up today, more than 2,000 years later, is that the witch wound, it's this part of you that is afraid of speaking your truth, of showing who you really are, and expressing your spirituality. And that is, of course, connected to the witch hunts.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That happened in the 14th, 15th, 16th century, where many, many women and men as well were killed because, just because they were, truly, when we look at the reasons why. So it's Pope Innocent the 13th, not so innocent, unfortunately, who decided that women who would show certain traits, it's all written in a book, like, I think it's called, I never remember the name, it's a Latin name, like Malefica something. So there's the whole book that was written at the time. And if a woman would fit into that description, she had the right to be tortured, burned, killed without a trial.
Oh my gosh.
And when you read the book and then get really angry because we're all connected to that story.
I am really angry just hearing it.
But I get in a fury if I just open that book. Because it just says things like using herbs to heal someone. And that's because you needed to go to the university to be a doctor. So if you could heal someone without having gone to the university, then it means you were doing witchcraft because you had access to certain information.
Or the university wasn't getting money out of you.
Yeah,
and
also
wanted a way to not have other people competing. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, wow. And it's also because the church was putting itself as the middleman. You cannot have access to God unless you go to church.
Right.
So women who were tapped in, who were spiritual, who were healers, who were birthing life, midwives, herbalists, artists, psychics, they were all tapped in because they were connected to their gifts. And the church said, that's not possible because we have access to God and you need to come to the church to have access to God. You cannot have your direct access, which is exactly what the Gnostics were teaching too.
Whoa. This is reminding me of the book. Oh my gosh. Now I'm going to forget. It's the one where the girl comes in. She's got the Yoga Sutras in her backpack and how yoga works. She comes into this town or country or whatever, and she's got a backpack and she's got the Yoga Sutras in it. And a woman at that time was not allowed to have access to that, but someone in her life was teaching her, like an uncle or something, I don't remember. And the book is about how, well, she shouldn't have that, so they jailed her. And then she's in jail and she ends up teaching the jailer yoga.
I love it.
Yeah. And it anyway. But anyway, it's interesting. But it reminds me of that because it's
the same idea.
It's the same idea. Yeah.
That women don't have access to knowledge because we're not good enough to have access to that knowledge. And so if we have a certain knowledge, then it means we're doing witchcraft. And because they wanted to have power over a woman, then they did those trials. And so today in our society, that shows up as like, we are afraid to speak our truth, to share about our spirituality, to even share our gifts with the world.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true.
It's also connected to the throat chakra. So there's because a lot of these women were hanged and...
Oh, right. This is an ADHD moment, but I'm going to say it because it's kind of fun. Not fun. It's sad. But one of my yoga teachers in a past life was hanged as a witch, and she had a throat chakra issue. And her, anyway, it was just kind of interesting. It was like, wow.
I have that too. My best friend, actually, the godmother of my son, she has a whole beauty mark on her face and on her neck. And it's from a past life where she was burned.
Oh my gosh.
And her skin still has, it's very light, but it's on one side. It's all her jawline and her neck. She has this big beauty mark.
Wow.
So that often happens that the body shows traces of past life trauma. And in this lifetime, she's still a healer and she's like, whatever. But it took her almost 40 years to get over that fear of sharing her gifts with the world. And then you have the bitch wound who's connected to the heart chakra. Okay. And that's all about putting yourself first, having boundaries and saying no. And it's really funny because, it's not funny, but so interesting. If you go on Google and you write, what is a bitch? I ask Google because Google has all the information, right?
Right.
You're going to have a good laugh because you're going to see that Google says it's a person that is unpleasant, especially a woman. And so when I saw that, I just couldn't stop laughing because I was like, what does that even mean to be unpleasant?
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
that's the perspective of the person that just was told, no, you're not doing, you're not doing what I want. So I'm going to judge you as unpleasant, and you're a woman. So I'm going to add an extra layer of bitchiness to that. And so it's this whole idea of like, who's telling the story? Like, who's writing this definition here?
Wow.
And it's the person that said no. So a bitch is just someone that knows her truth, knows her worth, and just says, yes, I can do this, and it's a full body yes, or no, I can't do that. It just doesn't feel right.
Wow. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I read this in your book, but when you say it, it just has a whole different resonance. So even if, I recommend doing both, by the way, if you're listening, if you haven't gotten Eleanor's book yet, highly recommend. And I'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, that hits deep.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, this change of perspective. And it also comes with this idea that for centuries, women were just told that they were baby-making machines. And that was it.
Yeah.
And so you do not have the right to say no, to have a desire. And so today, this wound really shows up as we're just always putting others before ourselves. Yeah. And as mothers, I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I think it's all about balance. But I see so many women fall into that trap even more because, yes, you do need to put your child before yourself because it's a child and it needs you, especially the first 3 to 5 years. But then you're also, if you're putting yourself first, you're showing your daughter, your son, what it is to be a woman in her power, what it is to be connected to your truth, what it is to honor who you are, what it is to fill your cup. And so when I work on the witch wound with my clients, I really invite them to change their perspective and to see it like, if your cup is full first, you're going to be able to give your best to your clients, to your husband, to your kids. And that's what they deserve.
Right. I have that conversation so much with women, and it's I actually, before I worked with ADHD, I was focusing on nurses, and I had such a hard time. My mother was a nurse. My sister's a nurse. I have a lot of nurse friends. And so I started working with nurses, and it was so hard to get them to care about themselves or put themselves first because of this exact wounding that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Because we're told to serve, to be kind, to put others before ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But how is that actually not benefiting them?
Right. Yeah.
And how would it benefit them if you put yourself first?
Right.
Just by, starting the day by taking care of yourself, taking an extra hour or taking an hour in the afternoon or, imagine it's the end of the day. You just had a really busy day. The kids are coming. They're like, Mom, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Your reflex is going to be like, okay, I'll go in the kitchen. I'll make them food and then I'll send them to bed and I can finally relax.
Right.
Perfect example of you're putting them first.
Yeah.
What if instead you said, my love, can you wait 30 minutes? Mama's tired. She just had a big day with her clients. She's going to run herself a really nice bath with rose essential oils, with candles, with music, with her favorite book, with a tea maybe, and her favorite cookie. She's going to take 30 minutes to fill her cup. I mean, the idea of just doing that feels amazing, right?
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Imagine how you would show up after those 30 minutes, feeling totally refreshed. 30 minutes of silence for yourself. You put your kids in front of the TV. I am not a big fan of the TV. We have like 1 hour per week minimum, but sometimes it's useful.
Yes.
And you go down, your cup is full. You're going to pour all that love that you have given to yourself in the food that you're going to make for your kids.
Exactly.
They're going to eat that love. You're going to have a much better dinner. You're going to have much better quality time. You'll be able to connect with them because you'll be connected to yourself.
Right.
And everything is going to go in a much smoother way.
Right. Less objections from the kids because they're going to feel your energy. Right.
Exactly.
It makes sense. This is what I talk about. And it's so hard. Excuse me. As you were saying this, I could hear in my head the objections of my clients. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, must be nice, and so I chose not to have children because I saw what women were going through. And I was like, no. I was like, I can't do it this way. That's not what I'm going to do. And I'm 50, so that decision has been made. Right?
And that's all fine. We're not
Yeah.
all meant to, be
Yeah,
mothers.
no. But the number of times I've been called selfish, or people are like, oh, must be nice to have all that free time. I'm like, I have lots to do. I just don't spend it on children. And but it's interesting because I do put myself first. And when I first would set boundaries around putting myself first, like the rejection I got, not just from friends, but from my own family, like my parents. And it was
It's
just
so interesting because I think it has nothing to do with you, but it just shows how women are bitter.
Yeah.
And tired of putting themselves last. But they're not daring to because society is expecting you to do that.
Right. Because you get slack. I mean, the number of people that had opinions about me choosing not to have children and how selfish that was and whatever. I mean, right. I appreciate the eye roll because it was obnoxious. It was obnoxious, especially because, now it's a little more common, but this was like 15 years ago when I was
less common. It's true.
And so it was definitely something, but I'll never forget my grandmother. It was a lovely woman. She's 104, still there. Lovely, lovely. She, she in a lot of ways embodies the divine feminine, not in all ways. She definitely has, moments, but I'll never forget. We had a conversation about it, and she's like, "You're 42. You better hurry up and have kids." And I was like, "Grandma, I'm not having kids." And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "No, that ship has sailed a long time ago." And she said to me, "Who will take care of you when you're old?" And I said, "Oh," and I could see this was about her. And I just said, "Grandma, with all due respect, I don't think that's a good reason to bring another human into the world." And she's like, "Oh yeah, that's a really good point. Plus, you never can guarantee that they'll be talking to you anyway." And I was like, I just was like, it was, but what I loved about that is that was a moment of her shifting out of that masculine expectation.
Yeah.
And being able to see that, like, oh.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy how much of like the things we do, the way we think, we don't even realize that it's not ours.
Right.
And it's society, and it's a society that's not even happy, that's not even fulfilled. And it's been there for 2,000 years. And it's just not working. And that's why we're bitter, and that's why we're criticizing each other and having projections on other and putting pressure on someone that's not having kids. It's your life, it's your choice.
It is. And
it's beautiful to have kids. And I always knew I wanted to be a mother. And I have a lot of friends who are not mothers, and everyone has their own path, and we have no idea about the path of the soul. We cannot judge it from the perspective of our human level. We just don't know.
I will say I had a psychic tell me that in a recent past life, I lived in India and had many children and many cats, and that in this lifetime I was not up for it.
Yeah,
that was after I already made the decision. But it was like I when she told me that, I was like, that is accurate.
That's funny.
So anyway, but yeah, did we? Now I can't remember.
And then the third, I wanted to cover the third one. So the third wound is connected to the sacral, so the Svadhisthana chakra, the second chakra, and that's the whore wound.
Oh, right.
And so, I mean, I could make a whole podcast just on that topic as well.
Right, because that connects back to Mary Magdalene.
Exactly. But also, we have to understand the word whore originally, from a semantic perspective, it meant the womb, the cave. So the transformer, the incubator, the birther.
Like it wasn't supposed to be a mean word.
No, not at all. If you look at all the words like whore, 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 and a lot of goddesses were called like that. And in whore sag, it's like the queen of the sacred womb.
I'm really speechless. I'm speechless right now. Oh my gosh.
So whore just meant womb. And so a whore was actually a womb priestess. And what is the womb? It's a portal, because that's from where you birth babies. That's where souls come through. So through your womb, you have connection with spirit.
I have so many parts of me that are so angry right now. I just need to name that. In case you see the disgust in my face, I want you to know it's not about you.
Yeah. In the same way that Mary Magdalene was called a whore and a sinner, so sin was actually the god of the moon.
Which is,
and so
got it. Okay.
Yeah. And so in the Akkadian tradition and Akkadian language, sin was the god of the moon. And so sinners were moon priestesses that were married to Sin, god of the moon.
Oh my gosh. Oh my.
So again, they were tapped into the cycles of the moon, which was connected to the cycles of fertility, which was connected to creation. So they were really powerful. This whole goddess tradition.
Wow. Well, and the moon, of course, being yin connected also. So
yeah.
Whoa.
Yes. So the horwood.
I'm just
I know it's heavy. I'm dropping big bombs here.
I love it. I love it.
And so a whore was really just a priestess that was connected to the cycles of fertility, that was connected to creation, that was connected to spirit, that was connected to the moon. And Mary Magdalene was definitely one of them as a high initiate of the Isis mysteries. She was also trained in the sacred sexual practices of the Isis mystery schools.
Oh my God.
And they were using sacred sexuality in an alchemical way to increase their healing abilities, their magnetism. And she helped Yeshua, Jesus, increase his aura, his presence, his power through the sacred sexual practices that they had together.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So you learn a little bit about that when you learn about Tantra. They were both Tantrikas.
Yeah. I'm reading
a lot of time in India.
Yeah, the autobiography of a yogi talks about how Jesus had time in India and that he had practiced the yoga cities, which is why he could walk on water and a pure plate. Anyway,
he learned a lot of things in India. Yeah,
he learned a lot in India, and then I'm reading. I think it's Jorg Feuerstein. He's got a book on it's on Tantra. It's got an orange color with a mandala on it, and it's like Life Ecstasy or something or what. It's a book on Tantra, and so I'm reading that right now. And the way I read spiritual books nowadays is I do a little bit of reading before I meditate, just to bring in, even if it's just a sentence, so that I'm having some connection to some kind of spiritual text.
Nice.
Yeah, but anyway, he talks about. Not quite all of this yet, but there's definitely some flavors of it.
Yeah, they were using, and sexuality was used in ancient Egypt in that way as well. It was not only used for pleasure, it was used for healing.
Right.
Because you can have very deep spiritual experiences when you have an orgasm, especially together.
Right.
And the energy that is created from two beings.
Right.
Making love consciously and making the energy rise up their kundalini, go to their crown.
Yeah.
It can be very, very healing for the community because we're all connected.
Right. Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh, okay.
So Mary Magdalene was trained in all of that, and Jesus as well. And you had these priestesses in a lot of temples that were helping men reach those higher levels of consciousness through lovemaking, through sacred sexuality. And they were womb priestesses. Eventually, they were called whores. And eventually, that got made very bad by the church. And today, that is impacting us in so many ways. So many of us women, first of all, don't even know what it is to have an orgasm.
Right.
Don't have that much pleasure when they're making love, are not comfortable in their bodies, we all think we need to lose weight and we would be more beautiful if we had 5 pounds less.
Yep.
And if we see a woman that is dressed too sexy, we're going to be like, who does she think she is?
Ah.
we project our own frustration and disconnection from our sexuality to others, which is creating a whole like vicious circle.
Wow. Yeah, it does. It really does.
Mm. And so the horror wound is all about just reclaiming your beauty, reclaiming your sensuality, your sexuality. But sexual energy is creative energy because it creates life, but it's also about how can you use that in your business? Sexual energy is also very connected to money.
Yes. Yes.
Because money is creative energy as well. Money is a tool that helps you to create experiences, and it's all very tied together. And so it's about being connected to your senses, what you touch, what you smell, what you eat, bringing pleasure into that, being present in your body. And so our lack of grounding that I was talking about at the beginning of this episode is also connected to that wound, because that wound is connected to the sacral. So if you have a horror wound, it's going to be hard for you to be fully grounded, fully present in your body.
Wow. That is huge. Well, I even think about that, and I know we're getting close to our time here, but I think about that in the context of my psychotherapy clients who, one, I'm sure, like a lot of women, it's a very high percentage, and their sexual abuse, trauma that they have, and then, so one of the things that we know is really common is interoception is a challenge for complex trauma survivors. So the ability to be tuned into what's going on. I'm saying this for my listeners, you might know. I suspect you know, but interoception is that ability to be tuned into what your body's experiencing and have awareness of that. And that tends to be almost sometimes completely missing in complex trauma survivors. And sometimes people have a little bit, but mostly not that much. And so then I think about that in terms of what you're talking about in terms of the horror wound and getting grounded. And it's like, they had a huge violation of their sexuality. And so it's like, oh my gosh, this is an energetic, right? Like the interoception is the science way of saying it, but this is like the energetic, like spiritual way of looking at that.
Yeah, it's the thing.
Wow. Holy moly, you do powerful work.
Thank you.
You do very powerful work. I knew you did when I was reading your book, but talking to you as a whole is like next level.
Another experience.
It's a whole other experience. I could talk to you for like days, but I know.
Well, also now that we've talked and you're familiar with my voice, you're going to read my book differently.
That's true. I will read it differently. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So buy her book and then try and pin her down for a conversation. No, I'm kidding. That was very bad. That was very wounded masculine approach to say, but
that's okay. That's okay. I'm always, business has to be masculine as well, and I am always happy to share my work and my wisdom with more women, because I think everybody needs to know this.
It is just such powerful stuff, and you just think about how different our world would be if everyone could do this work, and not just the women. Wow.
And that's what we're going towards. That's why this wisdom is out. That's why I've received these teachings,
Right.
It doesn't come from me. It's
right.
I've been shown this work, and I'm just sharing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So first of all, the book, The Path of Femininity, the six Gifts of Your Sovereignty is amazing. I recommend getting it. There's also like workbook, exercises in it. So you can actually do this work that Eleanor is talking about. And it's really lovely. And I suspect, this is a book I'd buy. I wouldn't get this from the library because like mine is all marked up and written in.
Yeah. That's usually what happens.
It's just like, and there's a lot of exclamation marks too. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Like, but also, there's a workbook you can download too that goes with it, I believe still. And it allows you to do answer the questions in a deeper way. But if people want to find you besides finding your book, how would they find you?
Well, the easiest way to connect with me is on Instagram.
Okay.
So you can find me on Instagram at Ele de Posson, ELEDEPOSSON.
Okay, great.
You can listen to more of my work on my podcast, the Sacred Roots podcast.
Yeah,
And
I
if you
listened to an
want
episode.
to,
It was nice.
great. And if you want to do this work, I work with people either one-on-one or within my mystery school, where I take people on a 9-month journey, mostly women. I mean, actually, only women on a 9-month journey to embody their soul so that they can express their purpose, their highest potential, and make the impact that they came here to make. And all this work is part of it, because you have to do this healing, awakening spiritual work to be able to birth your soul into the world.
That is so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for being on the show, Eleanor. I just really
Thank you.
appreciate you sharing your gifts and your wisdom and your downloads, if you will.
Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been super fun.
Yeah, of course. All right, y'all. This was super special. Make sure you share because, my goodness, this was a powerful one. And if you're not following yet, be sure to follow the Self Love Women Way podcast. All right, take care.